In the 1990s, in Spain specifically, many horrific crimes were committed, perhaps the most famous of which occurred in the mountainous village of La Romana. It was the story of a horrific crime that shocked the kingdom to the core, and changed the way an entire country dealt with similar situations. It is a story around which many conspiracy theories were hatched, and rumors of police corruption spread as a result. It was a heinous crime, the most horrific that the mind can imagine, and the cruelest that the heart can bear. 3 teenage girls were killed. In this video, we will talk about them, about the murder of the Alcácer girls. The night the Alcácer girls disappeared. On November 13, 1992, 4 teenage girls from Alcácer decided to go out and attend a party held by their schoolmates in a nightclub. The girls are Desiree Hernandez, Miriam Garcia, Antonia Gomez, and their friend Esther, and they are no more than 15 years old. Suddenly, before leaving, Esther felt sudden pain and decided not to do so. She did not know that she had thus escaped from a heinous crime that would be the talk of all of Spain for many years. Fernando Garcia, Miriam's father, was supposed to take the girls to the party, but the man was sick. Also, the party was in the nearby city of Beccacent and not in the city of Alcácer itself, but the girls made the decision to go anyway. The girls decided to take any transportation to go to the party, and also cover long distances on foot. First, the 3 of them rode with a couple in a car that took them from the city of Alcácer to the gas station at the entrance to the city of Beccacent. Upon arrival, the 3 girls got off and decided to walk to the party venue. On the way, they were met by someone they knew who was apparently coming from the same party. The boy was in a car. He waved hello to the girls who knew him and continued on his way while they continued walking. It was approximately 8 p.m. The sun set and darkness fell, and on the way, the girls deviated from the main road to a large garden on the left. There was a church inside that garden, and that was the last time anyone would see the 3 Alcácer girls. After church and on a narrow street, the girls continued walking excitedly to reach the school party, but fortunately, or, to be precise, unfortunately, they were met by a car containing 2 young men. It stopped in front of them and the 2 young men in it offered to take the girls to the place they wanted. Indeed, in a reckless act, the girls rode with them despite their ignorance of the identity of who was in the car. The girls asked the 2 young men to take them to the club where the party was being held, and they agreed, but suddenly while they were walking, the car passed the club and quickly set off to an unknown destination. The girls felt terrified and started crying and screaming loudly and trying to stop or leave the car. But the 2 young men started hitting them until they shut up and continued driving until they all entered the forest. The car took a bumpy, rocky road in an area called La Romana, located in the foothills of eastern Spain. There, the car stopped in front of a small house. It was in a place hidden from view and the girls had to face their terrifying fate. High-level research. The 3 girls did not return until the morning, and the people felt terribly worried. Some thought that the party continued until the early hours of the morning and that they would return, but none of them returned. The police were informed, who went to the party venue to look for them, but they discovered that the girls never arrived there. None of their colleagues ever saw them at the party or in the club. Thus, everyone confirmed that they were missing. The search began for the girls and the path they took. The car owner who took the girls to the Beccacent gas station told the police about this. The police focused on searching the city of Beccacent and the forests around it, especially when the girls' colleague testified that he met them on the road at the church while returning from the party at around 8:30 to 9 p.m. on the day of the party. The police searched everywhere, interrogating every resident of the area they could, as well as residents of the city of Alcácer, the girls' hometown, but without the slightest trace. No one saw them, and there are no signs of the path they took, nor any evidence of what happened to them. Days passed, and the news of the girls' disappearance spread in both cities. The situation turned around, and a state of shock, astonishment, fear, and anxiety spread among everyone regarding their children and the girls, who completely disappeared. The case became nationally public, and managed to make its way to the head of the Spanish government, Felipe González. On Christmas Eve 1992, he received the families of the 3 missing girls, listened to their pleas, and promised to assign more forces to search in the hope of finding them. The search expanded to include neighboring countries and continents. The case was referred to Interpol, which began adding neighboring European and African countries to places of interest in the search. Anything was possible, and expecting the worst was inevitable. Find Alcácer girls. Exactly 75 days had passed since the disappearance of the Alcácer girls, until the 27th of January. In one of the forests of La Romana, 2 beekeepers were walking around. One of them was an old man named Gabriel González. While he was walking near 2 abandoned buildings, he noticed something shiny, and many twigs, branches, and shrubs were placed in an unnatural manner. He hurried to call his friend called José and bring him to the place. The 2 men cautiously approached the piled-up branches. They noticed that they were placed in a way that suggested they were covering a ditch, and the shiny object was still sticking out from underneath them. Using the honey-collecting spoon they had, they tried to separate the branches to discover what that thing was, which was nothing but a watch. What is shocking is not the watch, but the prominent hand that was wearing the watch. Therefore, the police, who arrived late, were informed, and 3 bodies were searched and extracted, wrapped in a large blanket, in advanced stages of decomposition. Inside the hole, I found many pieces of clothing that were not for the bodies, a lot of garbage, and torn pieces of paper. The bodies were transported to the city of Valencia, where, after examining them, it was proven that they were the same Alcácer girls, Desiree, Miriam, and Antonia, so the police informed their families of the tragic news. Tests proved that the Alcácer girls were subjected to violent rape, horrific torture, and beatings by criminals. Wounds, bruises and fractures were all over their bodies, along with signs of violent rape, even with sharp objects. Part of Miriam's hand was missing, her teeth were broken, and tear marks appeared on her genitals. As for Desiree, her hands were found tied behind her with a black rope and bent in a terrible way. Her genitals were severely violated, and the shocking thing was that one of her nipples was removed with what looked like pincers, indicating the sadism of the perpetrator of the crime. Antonia's condition was no different from that of her 2 friends. She was killed by a bullet in the head, raped, and brutally tortured. Unfortunately for the Alcácer girls, they fell into the hands of merciless human demons. Horrific details about the killing of the Alcácer girls. Returning to the strange objects found at the crime scene of the Alcácer girls' murder, one of them was the focus of police attention, torn pieces of paper. When they were put together, it turned out to be a discarded hospital brochure that was found near where the bodies were buried. It belonged to a young man named Enrique Ingalls, and thus the police found a suspect. The police stormed his house, and arrested him, his family, and Miguel Ricaurte, who was living with them. After a series of intense investigations, investigators discovered that Enrique had nothing to do with the crimes. The 2 perpetrators were his brother Antonio, who was using his social security papers, and his friend Miguel. They are the same 2 devils who own the car. Antonio Angeles, 28 years old, is a criminal with a history of various crimes. He was imprisoned on charges of assaulting his girlfriend, tying her to a pole, and beating her, because she stole a bag of heroin that he intended to sell. He was an addict and drug dealer. He obtained a permit to leave prison for a week in March of the same year, but he decided not to return and escaped from the hands of the police. The second is Miguel Ricaurte, 23 years old, also an addict, and Antonio's partner in car theft and drug trafficking. The small house to which the girls were taken, located in the forest in a remote, deserted area, was used as a warehouse in the past to store goods, and then its owners abandoned it. Antonio and his addicted friends began using it as a drug den. That night, the car stopped in front of him and the two criminals got out, taking the three Alcácer girls, who tried to escape from them to no avail. They screamed and tried to call for help, but no one there would listen or help. It is believed that the criminals were carrying weapons, so they forced the girls into the house, took them to the second floor, and then tied them up. And there, the most horrific ordeal of rape and torture of young girls imaginable began, as doctors, the press, and police sources later reported, as well as the detailed testimony of one of the criminals. After the criminals finished raping the girls, they left them tied up at home, then they took the car and went to have dinner at a restaurant. Then Miguel went to buy alcohol from a nearby station and left Antonio guarding the house. The criminals returned home and continued raping the girls and violently assaulting them again. After they finished what they were doing, and at the end of the night, they took them out of the house with their hands bound. In the dark road during the night, the girls walked, followed by the criminals. They walked up the hill until they entered the forest, and in a narrow ditch they sat the girls on their knees. They beat them and tortured them with sticks and stones, and then, with a bullet to the head from behind, the lives of the three were ended. The criminals buried the bodies and hid them well until the two men found them by chance 2.5 months after the murder. Pursuing the criminal. Immediately after Miguel was arrested and confessed, after great pressure from the police, with all the details of the incident, Antonio learned of this from the news and hurried to escape, and it is said that he was at home at the moment of the arrest, but he hurried away. At first, the police were unable to arrest him or find out where he disappeared until they received a phone call from a witness, the same hairdresser that Antonio goes to and knows well. He had gone to him when news of the girl's murder in Alcácer spread, and after Miguel's confessions, and had him dye his hair and eyebrows golden blonde. The police tracked Antonio and learned that he had fled to Portugal, specifically to the capital, Lisbon. The Spanish police contacted the Portuguese police and began chasing Antonio, only to discover that he had boarded a ship heading to Dublin in the Republic of Ireland. She also contacted the Portuguese and Irish coast guards and was able to stop the ship at sea. On board the ship, the sailors recognized the criminal Antonio, so they locked him in one of the cabins until the authorities arrived. When the Coast Guard men boarded the ship to arrest him, they were surprised that he jumped into the water and tried to swim to shore. The sailors reported that Antonio was able to escape and jump into the water with the help of someone on board the ship. Despite this, the authorities did not leave him, but kept searching for him in the water, but they never reached him. The Spanish authorities and their Irish counterparts very much guessed that Antonio had drowned in the water, but they did not reach his body. There was a small possibility that he had managed to swim to a very distant shore and lived secretly somewhere without the police reaching him. To this day, nothing is known about him, and he remains wanted internationally. Theories and contradictions in the girls' issue. It is true that the three girls wanted to visit a nightclub. However, everyone began to have doubts about their true destination, as no one knew what the girls' actual intentions were on Friday evening. What is interesting is that they did not have money to spend in the club, they did not buy tickets to enter in advance, and they did not ask for money from their parents either, which raises suspicion. After Antonio escaped and neither he nor his body were found, a strange theory spread that the girls had been kidnapped and assaulted by a powerful figure in Spain who loved having sex with teenage girls. And Antonio Angeles and Miguel are just scapegoats to hide the truth of that character. This person was the one who smuggled Antonio out of Spain, and he now lives freely. The reason for this theory is the similarity of the incident of the killing of the Alcácer girls with another incident in the town of Manhunt, near Alcácer. By killing two girls and a boy in a horrific and brutal way as well. There is a source who stated that the police found hair in the bed in the property where the girls were raped. This hair did not belong to Antonio or Miguel Ricaurte, but the strange thing is that it was thrown away on the same day I found it. On the bodies, 7 different hair samples were found, and after DNA analysis of them, which were new at that time, they were found. The competent authorities revealed that none of them belonged to any of the girls or to any of the 2 killers, Antonio and Miguel. Dr. Luis Frontilla Carreras, professor at the nearby University of Seville. He criticized that autopsies led to the complete destruction of a lot of evidence, such as collecting the hair found on the bodies in one bag, performing unnecessary amputations, and getting rid of evidence that could be useful to forensic medicine at a later time, such as the maggots found on the bodies. He also stated that the autopsy was weak because, if done correctly, it could have led to verifying Miguel's statements and reconstructing and drawing a true picture of the events. A great deal of incompetence was demonstrated by the police in this case, due to the many contradictions that everyone noticed, most notably Fernando Garcia, Miriam's father, the media figure in the case of the girl's disappearance, which made it a notorious case and a stain on the history of the Spanish police. As for Miguel, he received a 170-year prison sentence for murder and rape, but he was released in 2013 after 21 years in prison and went into hiding. It is said that he was seen in southern France in 2020. Locally, the authorities erected statues of the girls in Alcácer as a memorial, and the story of the murder of the Alcácer girls became engraved in the Spanish conscience to the point that they began to liken Antonio Angeles to the famous American serial killer Ted Bundy. In the media, Netflix produced a 5-part documentary series entitled The Alcácer Murders in June 2019. In the end, what do you think, dear viewer? Were Antonio and Miguel the ones who committed the murder of the Alcácer girls, or were they merely scapegoats for higher parties? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and wait for a new video.